This video is about the evidence part of pre-writing. So we're going to take a look at how to choose the evidence and what are we looking for. So from our rubric at the back of your DBQ packet, you need to have 2 relevant primary sources from 2 perspectives, secondary sources as needed, and those sources need to be credible, clear, accurate, and related to the compelling question, showing understanding of the source material and appropriately cited. So we're going to start by looking for 2 primary sources that show that we understand what we're talking about. So before we find that, let's look at where we are in the graphic organizer. So our claim statement was right here, and before you start to think about, oh, I'll just copy what Ms. Plank does, I need you to realize I am taking both sides here. If you copy everything I have, it's going to be a terrible, terrible essay because you're going to be trying to do both sides at the same time and be so confused. You can't do that. You can take bits and pieces. If you like a quote that I'm using or something, that's fine. But you have to do this yourself. So, my claim, if I say the stamp was not justified because the colonists did not have a representative, I'm going to be looking for evidence about representatives. Instead, for right now, I'm going to argue the other side, that it was justified and Britain was spending a lot of money is the reason that I'm going to use. Now, I have to find 2 quotes from primary sources. Thankfully, all of our documents are primary sources, so they are all options that are good options for primary sources, and they all relate to our compelling question. Those were already chosen for you, but you have to choose which ones to use to support your claim. So I'm going to look at document B. Prime Minister Grenville would definitely be taking the side saying that the colonies, it was fair to pass the Stamp Act. So what does he say? I'm going to take a look at this. We said, let's see, my reason was Britain was spending a lot of money. So I'm looking here where it talks about money. So I have here the 700 or 800,000 pounds to 1.4 million pounds. That is data that could be used, but I wonder about using what comes after that. The money for these expenses must be raised somewhere. This great increase of the Navy is in great measure for the service of North America. That would work. Going on, it says, we have expended so much on the support and defense of North America. We have given them so great degree of security protection. You know what? I like that better. I think I'm going to use this right here. If I could, I would just copy and paste it directly from the text. For some reason, I can't copy from my PDF file today. You might be able to copy and paste on your iPad if you have part of it on PDF. So, however you get it, let's get it put in here. And we want to quote it, which means it's going to be the exact same words from the document. I want you to notice, as we do the exact same words from the document, that includes the punctuation in capital letters. So I have the capital W, I have capitalized North and America, and now I'm going to add a semicolon, because that is what is in the document, right? We have capital letter, and then there's a semicolon. When I get here to the ellipsis, I have to use the ellipsis. When I get to these brackets, I have to use the brackets. It has to be exactly the same as in the document. As I end, I am going to make sure to add quotation marks at the end, and that is my quote. I'm ready to find another piece of evidence. This one, you'll notice it says to write what the source says in my own words. If you find another quote that you want to quote directly, that's okay, but you can also choose evidence and then summarize what it says in your own words. However, it can only be the ideas that are in the document itself. Don't put your own thoughts here. I've decided to use a part of document D as my second quote. I'm looking here where it says, the colonies raised, clothed, and paid, and during the last war, nearly 25,000 men and spent many millions of dollars. And where it talks about the colonies pay taxes to discharge the heavy debt contracted in the last war. So they pay taxes to pay the debt from the French and Indian War. That's what I'm looking for. So I'm going to put that idea in my own words. I kind of just did, right? So there I have it. In my own words, it says the same thing as the document. Even Benjamin Franklin thought. Now, I got the Benjamin Franklin thing because it says from the Benjamin Franklin source, and he is the one who is speaking the answers, remember. So, even Benjamin Franklin thought that it was fair for the colonies to help pay the debts from the French and Indian War. That's my putting it in my own words, but the same idea that Benjamin Franklin had. I have my two sources chosen, so what's the next thing I need to do? I need to cite my sources. Citation comes from the source information at the top. You need the author's last name, so Franklin, and then you need the year, 1766. So Franklin, 1766. We're going to put the citation down here after the quote. So Franklin, 1766. And then I need the same citation information for the other quote. That one came from document B. So at the top of document B, it says this is George Grenville. I'm going to use Grenville, his last name, and the year, 1765. So Grenville, 1765, surrounded by parentheses. And notice the comma in the middle, comma after the last name before the year. Now, it says I need two perspectives. I happen to have two perspectives in my sources that I chose, but there's another part that we need to talk about here, and that is the counter argument. Because we're going to need to have a counter argument that gives the other side but explains why the other side is wrong. So the counter argument is down here in this yellow box. This is also called a counterclaim. Counter means like opposite in this case. So we're arguing against the other position, and I'm going to switch sides for this. You must stick with one position. But because I don't want you copying mine, I'm doing a switcheroo here. So ignore that part of the essay I was just doing. And imagine that I'm writing an essay saying the Stamp Act was not justified. Of course it wasn't. No representatives and all that. It's not justified. So if that's what I'm saying in my essay, I'm going to say some people say that the Stamp Act was justified. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I have to argue against that. And now, why do people say that the Stamp Act was justified? Well, that's what I was just talking about, right? Because colonists should have to pay their fair share of the cost of the French and Indian War. But that is wrong. Okay, so here I'm saying, well, here's what the other side says. And now I need to explain why that's wrong. When I'm looking at evidence, you might need to kind of write through and think through this from the beginning to the end. But our evidence is going to be the same as it was before. We're still looking at the documents for a quote. Still going to cite the source's name and the date. So we're going to look for one. And I'm going to use the same one that I used a little bit ago, right? What is it that backs up that colonists should have to pay their fair share? Prime Minister Grenville said, right? And then I'm going to put in my citation of Grenville, 1765. So I have a quote from the documents that backs up what the other side would say in time for me to say why they're wrong. Now, I can say that they're wrong and explain it, but it's best if I also have some other justification, something that supports me in saying that Prime Minister Grenville was just flat out wrong. So I'm going to look back at the documents. Where do the documents argue that the colonies really should not have to pay so much for the French and Indian War? The place that I see that argument against the colonists having to pay is here in document D, where Benjamin Franklin talks about the fact that, look, the colonies already spent money on the war and they didn't get paid back all the way. You would choose something there or your own thing and write that quote right here. I'm not going to do it because you've seen me write other quotes. You know how to do it. A quote comes with the exact words, capitalized, punctuation, all that, exactly like the document has it, and then put in the source, the last name, and the year. Go ahead and go through. You should have 2 sources in the green box, 2 sources in the blue box, and 2 sources in the yellow box. They're going to be on opposite sides, but 2 sources in the yellow box. Then you're done with finding evidence.